If you're not sold on this idea that Mayuri is one of Kubo's favourite characters, then look no further than the 1000 Year Blood War arc. It's safe to say that Mayuri was the MVP of this story arc and possibly the entire series after the role that he had played within it. It's safe to say that his resourcefulness, commitment to protecting the Seireitei, and the sheer levels of insanity that he reaches within the final arc are unparalleled. It would take forever to bring up every single thing that he has done to help the Soul Society, and with how much that he has contributed to the Soul Society winning the 1000 Year Blood War. He not only helped fellow captains like Kinpachi and Hitsugaya via healing them, he had even gone out of his way to rescue a dying Kira, a detail that is revealed within the light novel Beginning of the Revive of Tomorrow. But one of his best and most impressive feats within the 1000 Year Blood War arc of how he was able to take one of the most deadly Quincy abilities off of the board. He had essentially prevented this power from reaching its true devastating potential. I'm of course referring to the Schrift of Giselle the Zombie, a power that could have easily turned the tide of the battle towards the Quincy's favour. Not because of its raw power, but through its terrifying ability to indiscriminately turn anyone who comes into contact with Giselle's blood into one of her loyal zombie puppets. This power would have robbed the Shinigami of their military power, as they would all end up joining the Quincy side. Now in this video, I want to analyse and break down Mayuri's battle against the deadly Quincy Giselle, and how in some ways he had inadvertently saved the entire Soul Society from an undead nightmare in the process. Before the video begins, only 12% of the people who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Before we dive into their fight, it's necessary to understand just how much of a threat Giselle's power posed to the Soul Society, so that we can give a bit more credit to Mayuri as he was successfully able to negate her power. We first see Giselle's zombie Schrift in action in chapter 580 of the manga, where after Kinpachi had defeated Grammy and he was severely weakened, the Bambis had taken advantage of the situation and had tried to kill him. It had resulted in them launching a full-scale attack onto Kinpachi and the surrounding Shinigami who were trying to rescue him. During this fight, they all show off their respective Shrifts and abilities, and it is then when we first get to see Giselle's zombie Schrift in action, as she tricks some unsuspecting Shinigami into attacking her so that her blood would end up splashing onto them and making contact with their skin. She is successful as she turns the Shinigami into zombies and forces them to take their own lives. I remember reading this chapter when it was first released and having a strong feeling that her power was going to end up becoming a massive problem within the war. That is, unless somebody had taken her out. I didn't really think too much into why they had wanted to kill Kinpachi outside of the obvious strategic benefit of taking down a massive threat to their army. But when I think back to it now, considering how all of the Bambis had ganged up on him, I believe that they had not only wanted to kill Kinpachi, but they had also wanted Giselle to use her zombie ability in order to turn him into one of her puppets. It is a nightmarish scenario to imagine, and it would have made things a lot more difficult for the Shinigami, but thankfully this was never actualized, as Ichigo had arrived just in time to save Kinpachi. It's quite fortunate that the Soul Society didn't lose Kinpachi like this, because things would have turned out very differently if Mayuri had to fight him later on within the manga instead of Hitsugaya. We get to see more of the zombification power in chapter 588 when Yumichika and Ikkaku meet Giselle. She tries to use her usual tactics to bait Ikkaku into attacking her, but Yumichika catches on quite quickly and warns him not to, and he even has some time to make some rather interesting observations. Let's leave it at that. This causes Giselle to immediately summon her new zombie Bambietta Bastarbine, her fellow Seireitei and former friend. Bambi attacks both of them, who very surprisingly hold up their own against her as they deal with her endless barrage of bombs. Now this is more likely due to the fact that Bambi was performing neither at her physical nor mental peak, and her sluggish movements had given Ikkaku and Yumichika a better fighting chance. But they attack Bambi under the assumption that they're fighting a normal person, resulting in them letting their guards down after successfully stabbing her, and this creates an opening for Bambi to successfully hit them with one of her bombs, which results in them being severely wounded. Giselle would then begin to approach Yumichika in an attempt to also zombify both of them before the sudden emergence of a bright light which stops her right in her tracks. Mayuri and Nemu make their appearance onto the battlefield as they have arrived in time to prevent Yumichika and Ikkaku from being turned into zombies. Now this is where their battle truly begins, as the fight between Mayuri and Giselle starts at chapter 590. The mad scientist, while wearing his blindingly radiant suit, addresses Giselle, pondering on just how interesting the ability to turn your enemies into zombies really is. Giselle, while squinting due to the bright light of Mayuri's suit, mutters that she can barely see who she's talking to, as she asks Mayuri to identify himself. He mockingly responds by calling her ignorant, and wonders if she was unaware of the fact that great people were often depicted to be shining like he is now. I'm not sure if he's referencing Jesus Christ here, but Giselle responds that her question wasn't about why he was shining, rather about who he is. Ikkaku and Yumichika, who have been lying on the ground during this entire interaction, realize immediately that it's Mayuri who is speaking despite being unable to actually see him themselves. During this conversation between the two of them, Bambietta in a zombified state immediately steps in, having regenerated enough to once again fight for Giselle. Bambi proceeds to ask for, you know what, I don't think it'd be the greatest crime ever to completely skip over this exchange, so I'm going to do that. But if you want to learn more about what she was asking for, then check out my video on Giselle's zombification ability explained. Giselle turns around and notices that Mayuri isn't shining anymore, as he comedically states that he has toned down his greatness so that those who are beneath him can see him. A confused Giselle brings up how Mayuri claims to like how she treats Bambietta, but at the same time calls her lowly. Mayuri says that it's nothing personal, it's just that literally everyone is lowly in comparison to him. And this funny exchange between the two of them quickly turns serious when Giselle immediately orders Bambi to attack both Mayuri and Nemu, but thankfully both of them are unharmed by her explosions. While moving to higher ground, both Mayuri and Nemu figure out that the reishi bombs that are fired by Bambi travel at the same velocity. Mayuri then orders Nemu to prepare something and orders her to set it for 3 seconds, as Mayuri then releases some small white orbs. These orbs intercept the rapidly approaching bombs, but oddly enough do not explode upon contact. Giselle, curious about what's going on, follows after Bambi, and when they both reach the floating orbs, they end up suddenly exploding, engulfing both Bambi and Giselle in a powerful explosion. After the dust clears, it reveals an unharmed Giselle, but a heavily wounded and unconscious Bambi. Mayuri explains that by using his reishi locking devices, he could delay the detonation of Bambi's bombs, and by doing so, he had not only made her bombs completely useless, but he was also able to use them against his opponent. Giselle summons more of a zombie Shinigami to her defense when she realizes that Bambi's powers were completely useless within this fight, as she summons quite a number of zombies, and some of them are familiar to Ikkaku and Yumichika. Mayuri, to our surprise, responds by summoning his own squad of zombies due to not wanting to have to kill his own fellow Shinigami. It's hard to question whether if this is actually the case, because if you remember back in the Soul Society arc, Mayuri had no issue with killing his own men in order to lure out Uryu and Orihime. So I'm guessing that he had actually used this as an excuse to flex on Giselle by showcasing his own better zombies. Now this squad of zombies is revealed to be revived Arrancar, who have been put under Mayuri's control. They are the Prevoron Espada like Lupi, Dodoni, Saruchi, and even Barragan's Frascione Charlotte. This reveal was actually foreshadowed all the way back in chapter 306, when we see Mayuri raid the defeated Xyloparo's vault, where some Arrancar corpses were suspended in air. We're never shown who exactly he had found within the vault until this reveal here, as he himself would explain that it was their corpses that he had stolen. Mayuri's zombie Arrancar immediately start to tear through the zombified Shinigami with ease, and it's very funny to note that this entire fight is essentially both sides puppeteering their former enemies to fight for them. Mayuri's Arrancar zombies make quick work of Giselle's Shinigami zombies, with Charlotte single-handedly defeating zombie Bambietta and finishing her off with a Sero. Now at this point, it would seem as though Giselle has reached her wit's end and was about to be defeated, but this is where things would take a dramatic turn for the worst, as she reveals her trump card, which is none other than a zombified Hitsugaya. Now this was a very shocking plot twist that a lot of us didn't see coming, as Hitsugaya, after he had regained his Bankai and defeated Kangdu all the way back in chapter 554, seemed like he was doing well. I mean, aside from being critically wounded by Bazbi, he was still able to take out Kangdu. It's evident that he had succumbed to his wounds afterwards, and we see him again in chapter 591, and in the time since his last appearance, it seems like Giselle had zombified him, which was long enough for him to have an entire wardrobe change. Yumichika immediately prepares to use Kido to stop Hitsugaya, who knocks him away before he can even finish casting the Kido, with the resultant slash creating a massive glacier that knocks both Ikkaku and Yumichika away. Before they even get the chance to recover, Hitsugaya flash steps to them and stabs Ikkaku and begins to slash him even more. This causes Yumechika to move to block his sword in an attempt to protect his comrades as he tries to activate the true power of his Zanbakudo, but gets taken down by a impressive rapid combo of Hakuda and Zanjutsu attacks from Hitsugaya. Mayuri, who's been watching this entire time, takes note that Hitsugaya is able to move as well as he did while he's alive, and guesses that the reason for this is because he was still alive when he was zombified, a theory that Giselle confirms. Charlotte ends up attacking Hitsugaya despite Mayuri's warnings, because it was pretty obvious that Charlotte wouldn't stand a chance against zombified Hitsugaya. His analysis proves to be correct when Hitsugaya easily cuts him down. Mayuri prevents him from attacking his zombified Arrancar any further, as it appears as though he has stepped into the battlefield himself. He approaches Hitsugaya asking him if he'd like to be a test subject for a new drug that he is trialing, as he promises that it's solely for the sake of the Soul Society and not for his own twisted desires. To be honest, this fight is incredible, and I'd really prefer to break it down in its own video, since this video I'm dedicating to just breaking down Mayuri and Giselle's encounter. So for that reason, I want to skim over it here and break it down in detail in another video. After Mayuri defeats Hitsugaya, he's attacked by Rangiku, Kensei and Rose, who have in fact also been transformed into zombies by Giselle. The story moves on from here and we see them reappear within chapter 596, but they are now fighting on the side of the Soul Society again, while looking quite different from the last time that we had seen them, with the most notable change being the new dark markings that appear on their faces. Mayuri arrives and explains that he had defeated them using the same drug that he had used to defeat Hitsugaya, and he was able to simulate Giselle's zombification using the blood of her victims on themselves. This essentially had transformed Giselle's zombies into his zombies, and it means that he had completely negated whatever threat her zombification had posed. After this, he makes Zombie Kensei cut her down, thus ending their battle. It is actually crazy to think of how things would have played out if Mayuri hadn't found a way to reverse the zombification. Would that have been the end of the Soul Society, since Giselle would have continued to turn more and more Shinigami into her zombies? The possibility does sound truly terrifying, and I'm grateful that Mayuri had found a way to stop Giselle just in time. What did you think about this very iconic battle that takes place during the second Quincy invasion? It's one that's going to play out within the second Cour of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and it's one of the battles where I feel like the anime has a solid opportunity to expand upon. Let me know which areas do you think that the anime would add extra content to during this battle. Do you think the anime will show us more of zombie Hitsugaya, Kensei, Rose, and even Rangiku? Or do you think zombified Bambietta will be getting more of a role within the anime? I look forward to reading all of your thoughts about this fight, so definitely continue the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.